to all the attendees, please feel free to post your questions while the session is going on, and we can pick up. We might have a time only for one or two questions towards the end. So feel free to put it on the chat, and you can keep the chat live.
Yeah. During the session, I will also pick as many questions as possible to take them to the panelists in the second session. So, hello, Dr. Ghosh. Very nice
Hello,
to see you,
Dr.
sir.
Ghosh.
Good to see all of you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. Rashna, can you please put on your camera? Yeah, great. Nice to see you. Hi, Rashna.
Thanks.
Hi. So I think we'll get started with the session, right?
Yes, I think we should.
To go. Okay. Welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for making time today and being present at our webinar series, Demystifying EPR, a key enabler for circular economy. My name is Shri Priya Sridharan, and I lead the strategic alliances and partnerships here at Karo Sambhav. So, something that I would love to share with you is that when we thought of having this webinar series, one thing we wanted to happen is that we want to facilitate discussion in a way to solve problems, and that's what this whole webinar series is intended for. If some of most of you I see have been a part of episode 1, and that was focused towards enhancing digitalization in waste management. So today we are going to focus on the topic of capacity building to enable a circular economy. See, one of the biggest challenges to any transitions is inertia. And India's journey into a circular economy, for that matter, the world's journey into a circular economy is no different. And although India has enacted legal frameworks and policies to manage e-waste, plastic waste, batteries, etc., a major chunk of it is still being managed and processed in the informal sector. And I think most of us agree that EPR can work well only if all stakeholders in the value chain act, hold accountability, and develop the required skills. From policymakers, producers, bulk generators, and individuals, everyone has a role to play to amplify this transition. So we hope that this episode aids in facilitating that discussions and we are able to find some solutions in the days to come. Just to give you all a brief of how the event flow is going to be, we will open the session with Dr. Rachna Arora from GIZ India, which will be followed by the keynote address by Dr. Ashok Kumar Ghosh from Bihar State Pollution Control Board. Post that, we will open the panel for discussion where we have panelists, panelists from UNDP, Mr. Ashish Chaturvedi, then Dr. Thomas Lindquist from IIIE, and we have the third panelist, Ms. Anuradha from Jammu Kashmir Pollution Control Committee. With that, we have, I think, the last 5 minutes would be for Q&A, and post that we can wrap up. All right. So again, I repeat, please feel free to post your questions in the chat, and we would be picking up the best ones towards the end of it. So I now proceed to the session opening by Dr. Rachna Arora. Dr. Rachna is working as a team leader in EU Resource Efficiency Project of GIZ and a team leader on GIZ Circular Economy Solutions Preventing the Marine Litter Project. She has been working with GIZ since last 14 years under the bilateral projects of the European Commission and the partnerships projects with the private sector with relevant ministries and government departments towards policy formulation and implementations. She is a TEDx speaker, and previously she has been a member of multiple committees. One of it has been the interdepartmental committee set up by Niti Aayog on resource efficiency strategy, as well as the committee set up by Ministry of Information Technology and Communication on circular economy action plan on e-waste, MNRE's committee on solar panel recycling, and Ministry of Steel committee on scrap recycling. She's also a working group member of the FICCI Circular Economy Committee to support industry research and dialogues on circular economy. Over to you, Rachna.
Thanks, Shreya, and I think it was a very long introduction. Yeah. So thanks to the Karosambhav team and the JIZ team for actually inviting me to be the opening speaker. But yeah, I would say that things have been developing, at least on some kind of issues or challenges have been addressed on circular economy progress in the country. If you talk about, especially when we see the role that Niti Aayog is trying to play. But I really like the approach that you guys are just trying to take, at least on not demystifying really, but at least to put upfront the discussions or the challenges that we are facing with regard to, say, EPR as one of the instruments that is trying to change or at least bring the implementation scope within the circular framework and addressing it not just on end of life, but also addressing it across the value chain, whether it's electronics, whether it's plastics, or even we are seeing a lot of progress on other things. So I'll pick up, I have few slides to share. Uh, yeah, just share my screen. I hope it works.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think what I was trying to, looking at the agenda, just try to structure, as Jaya said, we've been quite actively engaged, not just on the e-waste thing, but also on the capacity development issues that can extend across to different varieties of waste, but also holistically, when we look at developing or setting up framework operations with on the Indian and the German side, capacity development is one of our very strong areas of collaboration, and that's why I really kind of like the topic that you've chosen for this thing. So I've actually put some of these perspectives, some of the issues that we see, and I think it'll be reiterated throughout, I hope, in the discussions today. So one of the things which is key when it comes to circular economy or on e-waste or on plastics is the technology that we talk about. So coming specifically to electronics, we know that there is a huge push pull factor, no, which is there or reflected, and that's why people look at electronics as one of the secondary resources, is because there's a huge demand on technology metals, no? So even if we talk about metals or the plastics, which is also high value plastic, it requires the right set of technologies which can actually extract as much as possible. And since I've been involved, at least in the development and progress of this entire regulation since last few years, I feel a lot of it on technology part is still a big miss. Even if we talk about the end of life stage of electronics or plastics, I think a lot needs to be done there. And if we see how EPR is developing in the country, where we have at least batteries regulation again being thought about, photovoltaics most likely would come in the new e-waste regulation, is what we hear. We haven't seen the new waste rules as well. The electric vehicles are to be thought about, as well as the other kind of, so tires are there, and there is a huge demand, at least on secondary resources. But if we look at the precious metals or the critical raw materials, there is, of course, the entire variety of materials or metals available in the stream, but this requires right set of technologies, which we have seen at least the progress from 2010 regulation to till date. There is no increased number of recyclers, but the thing is that how much and what kind of efficiency levels that they have and what is their recycling capacity is something which is kind of questionable, and we haven't seen a very clear success indicator on this front. So that's one of the technology gaps or an area for capacity development that we see as there. From the circularity perspective, if we look at the across life cycle stage of electronics, where there is a vision that Niti kind of looks forward, more and more kind of manufacturing in India. And even today, there was a news article that talks about the circular economy framework on e-waste and batteries. So there is a huge kind of a demand, and this we've seen globally, no? Like how circular economy could push the entire demands and supply of materials. But if we just talk about critical raw materials only, even globally, there's just 1% of recycling that happens. So there's a huge kind of a gap in this entire supply and demand of materials that are extracted and utilized. So I think that's one area where we need right set of technology, benchmarking of some of this, and of course, no auditing and standardization. Because I think the notion that the government has with regard to the new regulations that are being discussed, or even in plastics, as we have seen when it was released in February, a lot of it relies on between the processors or the recyclers and the brand manufacturers or the producers, importers. So I think this is where a lot of it on compliance mechanisms, monitoring mechanisms are required to be worked out by the Central Pollution Control Board, by the regulators on like the SPCBs, whether it's e-waste or whether it's plastic or the other waste streams. So I think this is where it's quite important and crucial as an area to build up the capacities there as well. Social perspectives are huge. The challenges are still there. I would still like to talk, and I think Shripriya, you mentioned about the informal sector, a lot of waste still lying there. So I think we refer to this kind of a work that we did with Niti Aayog and Ministry of IT on the resource efficiency strategy in 2019. And of course, till there, we've kind of there are these entire set of informal value chain actors that exist, and which is where a lot of materials still remain. No? But I think the major challenge which is there is the cost, the financial transaction that is there between the acquisition, the recycling cost, which is always to be like higher than the value of materials which are there as recovered by the formal recycling. And this is kind of the biggest disincentive, if you want to call it, or why the entire trading or the kind of informal markets that exist kind of pull out the material from the formal value chain, and it actually very minimal 5% or even less gets recycled into the formal chain. So that's I think the biggest area where we really need to, of course, not just say that we want to integrate the informal sector, but work out business models or see how they can be considered in the collection setups, or even in the at least the manual dismantling part where they can be integrated in the processes. And there are many more, no, Benedict. So I'll just kind of touch upon some of these issues. This is something like last 2 weeks back, I was also invited in the MRAI workshop. The entire idea of EPR is to actually talk about the upstream changes, and this is a positive development that we see that is happening at least within the Ministry of Environment, Circular Economy Dialogue, or even within the Niti Aayog's vision to actually design or talk about upstream changes related to product, where the plastic waste legislation also talks about the reusability or the percentage of reused recycled content in the products. And I think similar is the notion, at least with the EPR regulation that's coming up to promote more and more eco-design. So there is, of course, this area where Ministry of IT, we are closely working with them on their circular economy action plan as well. They actually look at developing the eco-design framework, design the sustainable product guidelines, and look at the product longevity. But the only issue that remains here is that we don't have so much of manufacturing here in India. So how much can we influence as a country always has a question. But something that I just want to put forward is that there are kind of even smaller components, say for example, this chip that has actually been made out of the recycled refrigerators. And this was a kind of a joint initiative between Thales and Veolia. Maybe not necessary that we talk about an entire product to be developed, but even in terms of using a value-added plastic, kind of making these kind of smaller chips, or so that as a country we do have subcomponents or assemblies that we produce here. So maybe that can be more designed towards a secondary reuse uptake as well. Technology I've already talked about. The only issue we've seen the scheme that METI has put forward on designing eco parks for electronic waste. We've seen the call which the Ministry, the Department of Environment here has put up, the Delhi government is trying to do, is a specific park on electronics. Now, I think this is the biggest question mark, that how can you talk about the materials or the recycling efficiencies if you just design a park which is looking at electronics, and we know there are no data, still we don't have a state-wide inventory, still the numbers are very, very kind of fluid to actually come up with a possible business model. So in that scale, if you actually look at designing a park which is only addressing electronic waste, we just kind of think about that's a kind of a opportunity, but it still needs to be designed to make a successful business case where you could possibly include solar panels, end-of-life vehicles, batteries, so that it makes still kind of a viable proposition for any recycler who's coming up front to invest there. Then what we have seen in plastics is the entire mention of digital tools, for instance, the CPCB portal on EPR. Similar is what they might address and do it in the e-waste bit, also to bring in that entire traceability to the materials and look at the entire transaction between the processors or the recyclers plus the PIBOs. Now that's intent is good, but how much capacities does a state or a central board has in terms of setting up these digital tools and its functionality? Now, how can you really mainstream that there'll be no paper trading on this government platform? This will be really a functional system. Now, this is where you really need technology, but you also need strong enforcement measures so that there are things which are much more traceable. And of course, areas with finance and technology require a lot of discussion, and we need kind of right streams of capacities to handle this kind of dialogue and discussion. So summing it up all together, I think for an enabling cooperation system, across society, technology, I just mentioned few, but you also could look around economic support, compliance. So when it comes to a systemic change that can be addressed through EPR across different materials, could be plastics, could be electronics, we actually could club it together to 3 or 4 streams. So first, if we look at a society setup, you need an enabling framework where capacity is to look at awareness creation, collection infrastructure, the urgency for a need, engagement drives. You've seen many kind of, like METI was running for 5 years, this kind of a program on awareness creation. There are a lot of tools which are available on their platform which can be used, but still you need recurrent messaging so that this remains within the society and could create the change that is that you talk about with terms of collection or setting up an entire transparent mechanism. Similar on a larger cooperation system, the role that the society could play is to influence the decision makers, awareness creation, bring traceability into the material flows, put more and more innovation, look closely to work with startups, address these variable quantity and the quality issues that we hear across by the recyclers or the dismantlers. So how do you actually address this would actually require a larger cooperation framework as well. Within the organization, I think this is quite important. And when I said, as Jia said, we try to address these things whenever we design a capacity development kind of a discussion, is we actually talk about the institutional capacities. CPCB example on digitalization I just mentioned. So these things I think are still a big question. State capacities, a ULB who is supposed to partially perform on the existing regulations. So what exactly is their role? What do they do if they see e-waste into their bin, which would not happen, but still in case they encounter, what are they supposed to do? Where are the collection centers to be established? So all of that is a big kind of requires skill sets and requires the capacities across the value chain. The cost coverage by EPR, certain products not being valuable as compared to certain others. So who kind of put forward this discussion? Where do you actually address different kind of measures under EPR? With regard to specific people, the human resources that we actually talk about, clarity on the rules, the advisory role that a regulator could play, plus the advisory role that a decision maker could actually play versus the monitoring role versus the compliance. So I think there are many more things. This is just kind of a summary to what I thought are the issues, just to put forward some of the elements into the discussion today. Yeah, so that's it from my side. Thanks a lot and open for any questions that you have.
Thank you so much, Rachna. I really love that last summary slide. It actually sums up all the points that you mentioned. And specifically, when you pulled in the topic with society, technology, economy, and environment compliance, and how you just bifurcated of clarity of roles as well of whoever is involved. So that kind of even building competence to you know to give 100% to whatever the activities are over there. So thank you so much for sharing those views. Now I would like to proceed further to the keynote address by Dr. Ashok Kumar Ghosh. He is currently working as the chairman at Bihar State Pollution Control Board and is also the professor and HOD research at Mahavir Cancer Institute and Research Center. He is a member of Regional Empowered Committee of Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change with the Government of India. He superannuated as a professor in charge of Department of the Environment and Water Management with AN College Patna. And on 30th June, after 44 years of active service, currently he's working on multinational research with Indo-Dutch Bangladesh project DELTAP for arsenic mobilization on Gangetic floodplains of Bihar. And recently, Dr. Ghosh has been awarded another international project, FAR Ganga, from DST Newton Bhabha Fund in collaboration with University of Manchester and the National Institute of Hydrology. He has published more than 50 research papers and authored 5 book chapters published by international publishers. He's also one of the coordinators of European Commission sponsored project Erasmus Mundus Your India and India for EU2 project. He was awarded for excellence in water showcase final at the 7th World Water Forum in 2015 held at Daegu, South Korea for his research related to arsenic mitigation in rural Bihar. There's a lot more that I can add to his profile, but now, Dr. Ashok, I would hand it over to you to take it further.
Yeah, thank you very much for very generous introduction. Well, most of the things have been already explained by Dr. Rachna. It was very informative slides that I went through. I would like to share my personal experiences as chairman of Bihar State Pollution Control Board with circular economy and all these discussions going on in the last 4.5 years. What I feel always that circular economy is, of course, it is the need of power as of today. And one most important reason for the requirement of circular economy is the limited resources, natural resources that we have available on Earth. You know, the new products are coming every day, and the uses, the style of the uses, that is also changing every day. There was a time when cell phones were introduced, and normal shelf life of one cell phone was 5 to 6 years, and today it is 5 to 6 months. People change cell phones like anything. And that way, you know, marketing is also important. New models are produced and the old models are outdated. And always, most of us, we are at a loss that what to do with the old cell phone or old computer. Things are changing. We started with Pentium and all that, uh, 378, things like that. And today, things have changed a lot. And nobody uses Pentium. I wonder that where all the Pentium-driven computers are now, and what effect, what impact they're going. And all these products, particularly the electronic products, they require many natural resources, as explained by Rachana. It involves precious metals, critical raw materials, and non-critical materials also. And they're all finite. You cannot use them indefinitely. You go for mining and mining and mining. But till when? It is limited. It's not indefinite that you will go on mining and it will never end. So in place of mining on the earth, now is the time to return mining to the e-waste disposal items, because that is the mining area now. If you don't use the mining of the e-waste product, then a time will be there then when you will be left with no natural resource to use in your computers, in your cell phones. So the first thing is there that we have to think in that direction, that circular economy is very important to have a balance. Even if you use circular economy, the resources won't last forever, but you can expand the life cycle for say 50 years or 100 years more. Like if you are using 100 grams of gold today, and if you can generate 60 grams of gold through the mining of the e-waste, then the load on the natural resources is only 40 grams. So that way you can extend, prolong the stock for greater period for our future generation. That is one thing. The other point that I would like to mention here, flag here, is the problem with the implementation part. In India, I always say, and I always feel, as chairman of Bihar State Pollution Control Board, that we are very good in framing policies and new laws and new rules. But we are not very good in the implementation part. The laws are there, the policies are there, but then when it comes to implementation, many people don't know who are expected to know the policy. Right? For example, one example that I'm citing you, that EPR. EPR is a very common word for scientists and people like us who are sitting here. But I had a conference called for the distributors in Bihar, distributions of the electronic product in Bihar. In Bihar, there is no producer. Only distributors and consumers are there. So when the EPR was there, then I called a workshop and I invited the people from. The first question they asked is, what is EPR? So I don't know. We don't know EPR. All distributors were there of big companies, even the Sony and Samsung and people like that. No producers, but distributors were there, retailers were there. And they never understood that if the producer is not there, then distributor and retailers are also responsible for implementing the EPR. So that is the status. The rule is there, and the person who is supposed to implement the rule on the ground is not knowing that what is EPR and whose responsibility it is. That was first thing, first shock. Then second shock was there. Then when I contacted uh, Central Pollution Control Board, I was informed that there are many agencies who have been interested with the collection of the e-waste. Then I went to the website and I got a list of certain collectors who are supposed to recycle or recollect, the discarded items. And when I verified through my staff, most of them were not on the ground. They were on the website, but they were not on the ground. So just for the sake of formality, completing the formalities, the names were written and they registered that we have this and that. After lots of search, we could locate one such collection center where the board was not outside. It was inside a workshop for maintenance. That was Sony. I asked them that why you have kept this signboard inside the workshop. Who will see? I'm a consumer. I want to dispose it off. I never knew. I crossed this road every day twice, but I never knew that you have a collection center. So there is a problem. Just for the sake of rule, they put something and then they feel that our duty is done. So that is the biggest challenge, that how to strengthen the system to accept the law. That is a very important part. And second thing, equally important that I feel always, not only the insufficiency, but the infrastructure. You will be amazed to know that as of today, in Bihar, there is no systematic recycler. Karosambha knows it well. And whatever recycling is being done, it is being done by the unorganized sector. A very crude way, very, very crude way. And the two impacts of this recycling through crude way: one, 100% recovery is not there, it's very partial recovery. And second, is big health hazard. They do it in a very crude way. And the first impact is on the recycler, and not only recyclers, people living around them. But the problem is that where we will go. Suppose Karosambha is collecting lots of e-waste, and as of now they have to send this e-waste to outside Bihar. They are not being recycled inside the Bihar. And if you transport it outside Bihar, then the cost escalates. The cost increases. And then if the cost of transportation and everything you add, sometimes it becomes, not feasible economically to do the recycling. It should be economically stable. Then only you will recycle. But if you recycle a product of 100 rupees and you spend out on 150 rupees on recycling, then that makes no sense. That will be the problem. And equally important is the problem with the entrepreneurs. As a chairman of Bihar State Pollution Control Board, I am not expected to put a recycling factory. Recycling factory will become coming through entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are not having good knowledge. I call the business houses and business unions like Bihar Chamber of Commerce and uh, Bihar Industry Association, things like that, for a workshop, just to know that where the EPR stands and what is the mindset of our entrepreneurs. Again, I got a shock. They were not knowing, many of them, that recycling can be also be one of the industry in which we can invest. They have money, but it is not in their priority list. So somewhere we are lacking. We are lacking somewhere to accept it and to keep it straight. The first thing that I told you, that they are very good in making policies and very bad in implementing it. day by day, what I see that the law book of environmental laws is became thicker and thicker and thicker, with increasing number of pages. And sometimes it is so complicated that although I'm a professor of environmental sciences, it becomes difficult to me to comprehend that the modification of subsection 2 of subsection A in part 7 of part 2, well, amendment number 3, amendment number 5, you go on searching, and at the end you are confused that what is the law. So if a person like me is confused in interpreting the law, then how a common man or entrepreneur will comprehend the law? I always suggest in all the forum that discard the old law book, and in place of amendment after amendment after amendment, draw a fresh list of law, what is feasible today. And then it will be simple for reader also to understand that what is the law. So if I, as a chairman of Bihar State Pollution Control Board, many times get confused by reading the laws that what actually law says, and I have to call my legal section, then what about the entrepreneurs and distributors and other common men? So unless we strengthen these things, awareness is very important. Law making is only 20% part. Policy making is only 20% part. 80% is, preparing to accept the law. The community, the distributors, the business class, entrepreneurs, common man, everybody. Otherwise, the law will remain in the law book. It will never come on ground. So these things should be highlighted. You have started very good discussion through this webinar. And I'll be very happy if you come with some solution for us that what should we do to make these EPR things and circular economy more acceptable, and uh, people should know that what it is and how to become a part of it. That everybody has to become a part of it. Unless everybody is not a part of it, it is a buzzword. It will remain a buzzword, and it will be an intellectual cycle that will be going on. Again, we will be having many webinars, many discussions, and then many reports will be published. But ultimately, the net result will be not effective. So that is my appeal to you, all of you, that find solution. Tell me also, as a policymaker, suggest me that do this, so that it becomes more acceptable and more readily implementable. So thank you very much. That's all for submission from me. And thanks again for inviting me to address this webinar. That will be very good webinar for future. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ashok. Thank you so much for being quite straightforward and honest with the challenges that the state is facing. And we will ensure that this webinar takes forward to some action, and hopefully it also makes people aware of the policy and well as translates into action. So thank you once again. Before I move on to the panel, I would like to extend our gratitude to the people, the organizations who have supported this webinar. I would like to thank our knowledge partners, GIZ India, V Forum, and Switch Asia, as well as our principal producer partners, Apple, Dell Technologies, and HP Enterprises. So, with this, now I'll move on to our panel. We have three phenomenal panelists. Panelist one is Dr. Thomas Lindquist. He has worked with environmental research and policy since 1984, and I would say he's the one who has actually coined the term extended producer responsibility. And I would have been requested to keep the introduction short, so please pardon me for skipping some part from your introduction. But Dr. Thomas, welcome on board to the panel, and I would move on to the next panelist, Ashish Chaturvedi. He is the head of the Environment, Energy, and Resilience at UNDP and has been working on topics of environment, climate change, and circular economy in India for 2 decades. Panelist three is Ms. Anuradha. She is scientist and nodal officer, e-waste, solid waste management, dairy waste, and poultry waste with Jammu Kashmir Pollution Control Committee. She's been managing the e-waste initiatives in the state since 2010 and has made significant strides in implementation of the action plan on e-waste in an effective manner. And next, we have our moderator, our very own Pranshu Singhal. He is the founder of Karusambhav and he has recently been conferred the Social Entrepreneur of the Year award in 2021. So I request all the panelists and our moderator to please come and switch on your videos as well. So over to you, Pranshu.
Thank you, Shripriya. And really delighted to have such a fantastic panel. I've been a student of Thomas Lindquist, and so it's a delight, Thomas, to have you here. Shares a lot of things. Have worked so closely with Ashish. Madam Anuradha has been very helpful in establishing Karosama operations and helping us work very closely with bulk consumers in the state. So really excited to have you on the panel. So coming to the focus of today's discussion, the the whole dialogue that we wanted to have today is on capacities and competencies. So what kind of capacities are needed at a country level when EPR is implemented, especially when we want to ensure that EPR activities lead to setup of a circular economy at a country level. So, and these capacities are required at all levels, whether we talk of producers. So how do I design my systems, EPR-based systems, for OEMs on design aspects again, on policymakers, because this is not a policy which can be created once. This is something which needs to evolve. So EPR always needs to evolve. So you can't just have a policy, leave it for several years and then think. You always need to figure out different levers to make it more effective. Enforcement bodies. So what kind of capacities are required? And this is one thing when I discuss with the Pollution Control Board uh, across the country, that how do we build capacities at a grassroots level, people who are going and enforcing on a day-to-day basis, people who are auditing the recyclers, people who are auditing the collection system. So how do they know what to ask? How do they maneuver the system in a way that it gives the best results? How do we work with retail, urban local bodies? What kind of capacities need to be created there so that they can ensure a free-flowing collection system, so that people like me and you feel empowered to participate in a collection system. We feel that all the information gaps are closed, and anything that we have given for recycling, we know that it is truly recycled. So there are a whole range of aspects on competences. So I'll start with a few questions to the panelists, and I'll put my first question to Dr. Anuradha. So if you could share, madam, with us some governance challenges that you have faced while enforcing EPR in Jammu and Kashmir, and especially what are the capacity constraints? What kind of competences you think are critical to the success of EPR implementation in the state? So, would really like to hear that from you.
Thank you so much for inviting me and to participate in this panel discussion, first of all. And Dr. Ghosh has already, I think, explained the few challenges being faced by the pollution control committees or pollution control boards. So, same type of governance challenges are being faced in JNK also. Number one, like we don't have any producers in JNK, right? And number two thing that even after a couple of years of constant verification being done by the JKPCC after that action plan that was approved by Honorable NGT to verify the EPR that we are discussing very much. But during the verification, it was found that maximum number of collection details as were shared by the producers through their EPRs, they were found to be fake. The addresses were not traceable. They were not identified even. So it took a lot of time and energy of our officers, but on ground there was found to be, unfortunately, there was nothing except a few, like PRO Karosambab is working there, there is PRO RLG is there, and except very few, two or three. So in fact, I was waiting for a discussion, meeting to be held with CPCB also, because I have so much to tell, and I got this opportunity to through this discussion that I want to highlight certain things, like Dr. Rachna also emphasized, Dr. Ghosh also emphasized. It's very easy to frame rules and policies, but the main role of EPR is to be executed by producers. Okay, but producers at their level are every now and then filing excuses, maybe of COVID, and I won't name any producer, but I talked to one or two key players. I keep on talking. They in fact get वो मेरे से परेशान हो जाते हैं. I keep on talking to them that sir, I am a person concerned with e-waste. If I am not aware where is your collection point, I can't find it, and how a layman would come to know that how to dispose of my e-waste? And the answer is that we have mentioned the details on our website. So this is a very funny answer, that why a consumer will search on a website of a particular brand. I will just name few key players, and I would like that each and everyone should be aware that, oh, it's Samsung product, I have to go there. Oh, it's HP product, I have to go there. And this is the way to dispose of. Why after framing rules, I think 2011, the first draft came up and rules came up for the first time. Till now, we are not able to fix the duty of producers in a strict manner. Even after its amendment in 2016, okay, what happened now? Every control for this default as pertains to producer, it is with CPCB. Pollution control, I think Dr. Ghosh will agree to this, that PCBs and PCCs, our hands are held up now, because we are only entitled to make physical verifications of collection points, report them to CPCB, that's it. We are not authorized to take any action on our own. And we keep on waiting for months together that if we have reported regarding non-compliance on part of a particular producer, why it is not being addressed. And when it is not being addressed, the morale of the field staff who visits a particular collection point again and again find it's closed, not traceable. So these things are unanswerable till now. So I think it's a very far race again, because what I will clearly straight away tell at this forum, that we feel stagnant. After 2 years, after talking about APR so much, we feel stagnant. Even key players have even closed their collection points in our UT like J&K. So I was shocked if there is no collection point. They said it's at Chandigarh, it is at Fulana, it's at Himachal Pradesh. And how will you motivate where the consumers? That collection point is at Chandigarh, it's at Himachal Pradesh, but you bring over your product to this center. At least there is, if a producer spends so much money in advertising its new brand item or product introduced in the market, then why not under EPR he makes a big advertisement in the newspaper for e-waste collection too? I'm not able to understand the answer at how the producers will justify. How are they implementing EPR? It's still a story to discover that how are they working. I don't know. And again, one more thing that I will let you know, that through this forum, I will like if the thing can go forward, that all PROs are PROs. Like Karo Sambhav, people know that I remain in contact personally with the Karo Sambhav people. Please share your collection details so that we can share with the CPCB. So when the rules are framed, I have been framed, I think this thing should be a mandatory part, because how a PCB or a PCC shall submit its collection details until and unless the PROs or the collecting agencies don't submit with us. I don't know how the other PCBs are submitting the details, but I have to put forth from my side. So these things should have been a part of rule. It was very simple. Second thing, Rachna ma'am is also there, I think, that when in the rules there is a format, form 3 for annual reports, and when in the rules there are responsibilities laid for bulk consumers, but there is no mention in the form 3 what we have received from the bulk consumers. So we are spending our time and energy in educating bulk consumers, forcing them to file their annual returns, but how to report to CPCB, there is no mention to that. So that is, these are very important things that is where the gaps. So we need to fill these gaps because where the how to acquire this circular economy to fill the gaps. Most of the bulk consumers, there are two reasons: lack of awareness, and second, uh, they don't feel forced. They say, "Ma'am, we are not mentioned in the rule. हमारा तो नाम ही नहीं है. Why will we submit annual report?" Then what I did, I mentioned their name personally in the format, got it modified on my basis, and Arthur, no, 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 your name is there. Please submit your annual return. So there is a huge gap. We are getting most of the waste from bulk consumers, but we are not able to mention in the annual report submitted to citizens. So awareness at the part of producers, it's at a very, very minimal stage, negligible, I will say. Uh, in fact, I suggested Kaurasambhav team also to change a little bit their strategy. No doubt they are working very hard, contacting with schools and kids. And I just made a suggestion and I requested, please let us move a bit forward. We have to, but I personally believe we will have to reach at the doorstep of the consumers, at the doorstep of the stakeholders. What producers were required to do, so we need to work harder for that. So that was from my side. What are the constraints we are facing in implementing? Thanks.
Sure. Thank you, madam. Thank you for sharing your views. Thomas, I'll come out to you next. Uh, Thomas, you coined the term APR in 1990, and since then it has taken so many shapes and forms across the world, multiple implementation formats, multiple ways of interpreting the same term. From your experience of EPR across the world, where do you find the competence gaps and capacity creation needs so that EPR truly becomes the tool which gives a very impactful solution? So where are these gaps? And what is the cost of not building this sort of a capacity across the, what have you seen? What are your experiences telling us? Over to you, Thomas.
Thank you. First, I must say it's a big pleasure to talk to an Indian audience. I have been lucky a number of times in my life and been able to come to India, and I've always enjoyed it very, very much. So I have a special thank you to allowing me to come here and to the Switch Asia policy facility for bringing me into this work and giving me the chance to once again try to understand India and try to share some of my experiences. And we are also working with some other Asian countries, and I'm sure that will also be delightful. But back to your questions. Well, we have heard a lot of wise words already today, so I hope I won't repeat too many things, but maybe emphasize a few things and come up with some of my more European experiences. One of the things we have been very good at in Europe, especially in the northern parts of Europe, which I know better, is the collection. If we compare how it was some 20 years ago with today, it's a totally different world. I mean, almost anyone, almost any company and so on, they actually know what they should do. Maybe not in all small details, but they know and they understand it. And we are quite good in this part. Where we are missing more is to take care of what we are collecting in a good way. And we heard that already today, and I understand that this challenge is also part of the Indian experience. But we really need to do more in this area. And by doing more in this area, I think we will also get the manufacturers, the producers, to really pay more attention to the new products we are designing. What happened in these 30 years I followed it is a bit unfortunate, because companies in the first years were very devoted to trying to change their products to improve them. But gradually, many of them have realized that the way we are running the systems, it's not such an important competitive issue as they thought from the beginning. So the attention paid to these issues is much lower than what I expected, what the companies were expecting, and what we need. So we need more attention from the companies. And how do we get that attention? Well, we need to make it important for them. And companies are there to make business. And they have other wants also. They want to be good parts of society and etc. But number one is to make business. So you can't compromise very much with that goal. So what are we missing then? And I think we are missing much the same things. If I compare my part of Europe with India, we are missing very active society in the sense of the supervisors, the authorities, the ones who do formulate laws, as we heard, but sometimes the follow-up is really missing. It is different when you come to these products from going in out and inspecting a manufacturing facility. And we have to recognize that, and we have to see that the people who have this task really know what to do and how to act. We must train them, we must give them a guidance in this. We have had serious problems with EPR systems in Europe. I remember very well the challenging meeting the German packaging EPR system some 6-7 years ago. They had a competitive system, so they had 10 different PROs, but many of the things were common, like much of a collection system and etc. And the way of getting new customers and etc. was to have lower prices. And lower prices, well, that also meant a worse work. More of cheating of various types. And for a long time, nothing was done. And this was really deteriorating the system until it became obvious and the government had to step in and put up rules which were much more clear when it comes to what is asked from a PRO. Rules which you could audit and follow up. In the German case, it also means that we realize that many of the inspectors in the state organizations may not have time to follow up on all. So you also create, you could call it an ordinary auditing system with private companies, with very clear rules for what am I going to audit. so that we pay attention to these issues which are relevant for the EPR. So please try to see that the people who need this knowledge has it. Because in many cases they don't have it, and you heard it already from the previous speakers. And see to that PROs are forced to give information which really tells about what they are doing and can be audited. I think this kind of is my first thoughts. I'd be happy to come back if there are questions or anything else. So thank you,
Sure.
Pranshul.
Thank you, Thomas. So I'll move over to Ashish. Ashish, you have been doing some very deep work with Government of India, many state pollution control boards, urban local bodies, departments of environment for now almost 2 decades. Uh, from your experience, what is it that you're finding is the missing ingredient from a pure capacity building point of view? I mean, we can create a whole list of things which are missing, but if you were to just focus on capacity, what is it that you need, that you are finding we need to empower people at a state pollution control board, Department of Environment, other bodies to make a much larger difference than what is being made today?
Thanks, Pranshu and
And
Supriya.
anything that you want to add, beyond this. So
Sure. So thanks. So good to sort of be here and speak on a topic which is very close to my heart. I think, of course, when you hear when you talk to people who are currently sort of in the business of regulating, you basically talk about the here and now, the struggles, the day-to-day struggles that you face, bringing people together, regulating them, trying to sort of make them follow rules and regulations. But I'd like to kind of zoom out a little bit to have a little bit of a distance from what sort of we've been observing for a long period of time. And I think one of the remarks in the chat box has already said that sort of, yeah, well, and of course, I think one of my previous speakers also said people don't even know what EPR is. It's strange. If you think about it, the IPL began in 2008 in India, the Indian Premier League, no, on cricket. Everybody seems to know the expansion of that acronym on the streets. And it's not by accident that people know it. It's work of design. It's sort of brilliantly sort of orchestrated. Now there is huge amounts of money which goes behind it, and there is big business to be made in that sort of entire space. EPR is definitely not one of those spaces, and I think Thomas's sort of work is brilliant. And of course, he talked about this, that companies want to make money, but maybe they're not actually making enough money doing EPR. And that's probably the reason why sort of it's not really catching the imaginations of the people, and people still in the state pollution control boards also struggle to sort of even understand what the acronym stands for and how it can be expanded. Now that's sort of the first thing that comes to my mind is how important is EPR in the priorities of sort of, well, different stakeholders, and how do you push it up in the priorities of different stakeholders within the country, right? So you have the producers, you have regulators, you have politicians, of course, you have bilateral, multilateral agencies, you have PROs, you have recyclers. How do you collectively think about pushing this agenda higher up in the priorities and the imaginations of those who are supposed to implement this? And I think the fundamental challenge, and I think Rachna mentioned a few capacities. So when you start thinking about a competence or capacity framework for implementing certain activities, some of the things come obviously to mind. Now, you need to raise awareness of people to understand what the regulation stands for. You need people to understand the business, the technical sort of nuances of how regulation can be implemented amongst different stakeholders. You need to think about business models at different levels, right? So technical capacities, financial capacities, regulatory capacities, capacities for infrastructure. But I think in addition to all of this, there is a certain part of the capacity space which we don't really touch, and I'm becoming more and more convinced as I work in this space, is about how these different stakeholders interact with each other. What are the basic rules of the game where stakeholders interact with each other? Is there a safe space for interaction, for learning? Is there a safe space to be wrong and still not be pilloried for being wrong? And I think this is where these softer skills of sort of cooperation, of stakeholder management, of engaging with diversity of opinions, perceptions, and I think sort of every every dialogue that you have with sort of between a regulator and between between the regulated can actually go in very many different directions. But does it always need to end in finger pointing and in conflict? Not necessarily. And I think this is where we really need to innovate, to start thinking about how these multi-stakeholder platforms and engagement platforms are curated, where you exchange, where you have a dialogue, and then you come up with a sort of a certain way forward, not necessarily avoiding conflict, but also trying to live comfortably with conflict and trying to have a certain way forward with engaging with different kinds of actors. And I think there are many ways of curating this. And there are some states which are doing it. There are some places where it's already happening. For instance, in this space, I work a lot on climate policy issues as well. And on renewables, there is that safe space for dialogue, which doesn't exist maybe for other topics, right? We also have a very safe space for dialogue between the private sector and the regulators and the policymakers on infrastructure related issues. So I think it's important to find that safe space, that safe dialogue sort of space, and also strengthen capacities of different actors on these skills, which I think are really sort of missing. I'd like to stop by giving an example. I remember doing we were training 15 state pollution control boards in a room. I think Pranshu, you were there in that room as well at that time. We actually had 5 people from the producer side, and the EPR regulation was early days of implementation. And we had the most ridiculous conflictual situation which emerged because there was basically, okay, you guys don't do what you are supposed to be doing. And then, of course, the regulators being told that you actually don't know how to regulate us. I think what's important is to kind of really get into those rooms, bring different voices, bring different actors, let people engage with each other along with conflict, along with maybe some kinds of sort of bouquet, well, brickbats mostly, but then arrive at a certain sort of way forward, because that's where progress will happen. I don't think progress is going to happen if people don't engage with each other and don't really have a sort of a, and for that we can actually have trainings. I think we need more capacity development on those soft skills, in addition to, of course, having the clarity on all the regulatory and sort of policy related aspects that have been touched upon already. So I'll stop and happy to come back later.
Thank you, Ashish. So really loved your point about safe spaces. And I think we have failed miserably in creating that safety. It is always a conflicting situation. It is the fear. Okay, if I'm sitting with a regulator, what do I need to speak with caution? How much information do I give out? And the regulator is, okay, I need to get some more information because I don't know the space enough. So how do we create these safe spaces where people can interact? Find joint solutions is critical. So I'll just pick up a few more questions to take the dialogue further. Thomas, I'll come back to you. From your point of view, so you have already talked about differences that exist between Europe and India. Uh, what do you think we should be doing, considering, so Indian EPR is now going into a space where the role of collection systems is kind of being eliminated, or it's not being discussed in the regulation. So it only talks about a producer and a recycler and exchange of certain certificates between them. So we have a plastic waste regulation which has been coined at this. Uh, EPR in batteries seems similar. Even for e-waste, this is a dialogue under question. So what would be your view? And this is also a question which has been asked by one of the participants here. where they are saying EPR is all about shared responsibility, whereas the new rules that India is framing are all about responsibilities of just two organizations. So what's your view on these things?
Well, I have a number of times come into the discussion about shared responsibility. And I do come also from a society where people are rather friendly in discussions and so on. We have a kind of low tone. So in many ways, I like this. On the other hand, I also know from many areas, like raising my kids and etc., that you may share the overall tasks, but you can't share the detailed task. You have to give someone a task. And in organizations which have a long history, like let's say the military, you will never stand up as an officer and say, can someone do this? You're always telling who should do it. And I think when it comes to these things also, you have to be clear who is responsible for what. But then you can cooperate on a number of issues anyway. I like this idea of the safe spaces also. I know from a number of cases that a lot of the progress which we have seen comes from cooperation. But it's a cooperation where you're selecting what to cooperate on. And then you're competing on the things which are open for competition. So a combination of these things. But be careful with the word shared responsibility. I want the responsibilities to be clear and allocated to the right actors.
So Thomas, just building on this, and Ashish, please join in. Dr. Ghosh, so we are opening it to all the key people who are present. So please share your views. So do you think if we just limit the roles to two parts of the whole value chain, which is one producer and another recycle, can this problem even be solved if we do not do any allocation of responsibilities, if we do not spell them out, who's supposed to do what? What is your view, Ashish?
Yeah, I'd like to come in here because I actually we're working on this and sort of thinking through this so see there are like this market-based mechanism or sort of the market is going to take care of a problem which was actually created by the market itself. It's slightly off, of course, but I think we shouldn't really kind of belabor that point. I think there are three assumptions behind this thinking, right? So you're like, okay, the first assumption is that the producers are willing to make substantial investments to improve the value chain, right? So right at the top, you're actually making substantial investments in the reverse logistics, and you're not relying on the low-cost sort of solutions in the informal sector, right? So that is a big assumption that you basically are going to make investments, you're going to improve, and you're not going to rely on the informal sector. So of course, the informal sector will survive in this scenario, but it would basically not have any improvements in its operations because the very premise is to actually take advantage of the low cost sort of operations in the informal sector, right? The second is that the brands or the producers would make improvements in the quality of the recycling operations as well. So they would actually make some kind of backward linkages, forward linkages with the recycling, and you would start sort of, so this is the assumption which is driving this virtuous cycle behind the market-based approach. And the third one is that the recyclers can be monitored perfectly without any leakages. That is a big assumption, right? So that you can actually, so now if any of these three assumptions is violated, you will descend into a vicious cycle. where you basically will have leakages which will happen at very many different levels. And I think this is precisely the problem why traditionally you've had multiple checkpoints within the value chain. There has been an audit trail, not because it was fun, there was a function to it. And you weren't doing it just for the heck of it. And I think by relying on this sort of end of pipe kind of, well, sort of you start at the top, you end at the bottom, and the market is going to take care of the flows, relies on several sort of fundamental assumptions. And if these assumptions are violated, and they are violated in the real world in very many times, I think we will descend into the vicious cycle. And this is something which is going to happen not only for one part of the waste stream, in multiple parts of the waste stream, I would say.
Pranshul, you're on mute.
Yeah. Thomas, do you want to say something? Add something?
Yeah, I think that all systems, whatever we choose, is going to crack if we rely on one approach. And I think the market economy approach is very clearly like that. So we need clear rules which are not established by the market actors. We need a society, and society which is ruled by good governance. Now we also know that it's asking very much. And if we would just say, okay, let's see to that we get as good governance as possible and not do a lot of other things, I mean, we will run into big problems. So it's a combination of various things. And I do think we need to get the market actors more interested in this area. We can do it with economic, but we can also do it with, or enhancing it with public relations and etc. But behind this, we need a very active society which knows what we are talking about. Not everyone, because there's not capacity for that, but enough people. And we know when we are not able to do it, we will have to have experts. For instance, auditors who are specialized on this, and we employ them for this area. And we need to kind of see to that the big apparatus of the government is also looked after, that we have good rules around this, that we see to that people working there are actually working for society and not for themselves. So I think it's a complex thing. Please use the market economy for what it's good for, not for the other things. Please use the government for its fundamental rules and see to that base material, which in this case producers and their representatives have to put together, which is auditable, so that you can follow it up. It will never be perfect, but we can take very big steps in the right direction. If we, for instance, look at the demands you have on EPR systems, I call them like that. They don't really like that in North America, but in Canada and in US, a number of states and provinces have these systems. And they are very good at this, putting demands on PROs so that they tell what they are doing and that they follow up with information. And it makes it much more auditable than many of, for instance, the European systems. But also in Europe, there is good work which is starting in this area. So hopefully we will see improvements in many countries, not the least in my own country, Sweden. Unfortunately, the follow-up from society could become much better. So I have a lot to work on at home when it comes to these issues. But we do speak about it, and many people who are knowledgeable in the area, they would agree with me. So hopefully we can get enough people so that we make the changes.
Sure. So, Thomas, thank you for this. So, I think good governance is coming as a very important point to drive this vast change. And capacity building will have a very significant role in enabling good governance at a country level. Dr. Ghosh, one of the participants has put up a question: how do we put these mechanisms in place so that greenwashing is averted? Today, in the name of EPR, there is greenwashing, there is fake work, there are serious challenges. So how do we create a system, which enables, what kind of capacities do we start building, which enables that, this greenwashing stops? Just to share some numbers with you, in a recent forum, it was declared that India recycled over 375,000 tons of electronic waste. This is an unimaginably large number. And in the same forum, the recycler said, well, we are not getting any waste. Only 5% of our capacities are being utilized. So we see a huge conflicting statement. At one end, a statement which says we have moved from 5,000 tons being recycled in a formal way to 375,000 tons. And at the same forum, recyclers saying, well, this waste is not coming to us. So where did this waste go? Who recycled it? And today there is no auditing of PROs in this country, and we are going to a system where we are even eliminating PROs. So how do you think, how should we make sense of this going forward?
Yeah, it is a big problem, and that we are facing in plastic industry a lot, because most of the plastic waste that is generated in cities like Patna, they are non-segregated. Still, segregation is a big challenge in cities like Patna. I don't know that how far it is successful in Bombay and other cities, but in Patna or other cities of Bihar where I travel a lot, still segregation is a big challenge. And non-segregated waste, that includes so many things, that is supposed to be recycled. I don't know how. And we get the certificate from the concerned agencies that we have disposed of this quantity. What I did, that I asked them the question that can you give me the location of the segregation site where you segregate the unsegregated waste, plastic waste? And they had no answer. And then I canceled their license, because what they were doing, that they're putting the garbage somewhere and giving the certificates. So these malpractices has to stop. And we'll have to have a check and balance. Because if you don't segregate and simply you dump it somewhere and give a certificate that we have recycled it, that is not fair. We are strict on that. That is one thing. And second thing, for the electronic waste particularly, we have to give some incentive from the company. At the policy level, I'm talking, that if it is mandatory for a company, sort of buyback, that if your old cell phone is there and you're going to discard it, we'll take it back and give you back some money. And that money they can charge from the consumer itself by increasing price by 2% or 1%, whatever, so that the company should not say that we are not getting profit. And suppose if I'm buying a cell phone in 10,000 today, and they charge 10,100 by me, with a condition that if you return this cell phone after using it for say 2 or 3 or 4 years, then you will get back your 100 and plus extra 100. So these type of incentives will promote people also to go for recycling. Because as a citizen, I feel always that we don't have motivation to give it to recycler. And also no knowledge that where to give the product to be recycled. So these things has to be strengthened through publication. We are also giving newspaper advertisements about the PROs and the rules that are regulating them. But our effort is not as much as I want due to a scarcity of fund also. Sometimes that also becomes constant because giving newspaper advertisement is very expensive, very costly. We are giving that for producers, for consumers, for everybody. We have made some of them. I'm trying to mobilize them, and from time to time, we are also organizing as Pollution Control Board the meetings of the different stakeholders, as you said, that the stakeholders of different types they should come on one platform. That we have initiated. It will take some more time to become more interactive because there was initial ice breaking. After that, uh, people try to understand and realize that it is important for everybody. It's not important only for government, but also for climate and their future generation, environment, and also for economy and their profitability, everything. So that way we are able to convince at least now that the entrepreneurs and the distributors, they know what is EPR and what is the cycle that we are talking about. Things are moving, but they're not moving very fast. We need more resources and more interactive actions, and also the activity of the different line departments concerned with the problem. Because it's not only the problem of pollution control board. The pollution control board is one of the stakeholders as far as policy is concerned. Many departments, government departments are a partner in this. They have responsibility in this. So that also we are trying to do, to mobilize all the different departments who are concerned with this problem and bringing them on one platform. We have already had 2 meetings of line departments, and we are trying to pull in funds from different departments also to make people more aware. So things will improve. It is very nascent stage as of now, but I'm optimist. We are trying hard to resolve the issues, and I'm hopeful that it will take at least 2 or 3 years more to make it effective tool for which it has been meant, for which the law has been produced. Because there is a need for educating the people and bringing all the stakeholders in one platform. That's not easy task. They're very difficult tasks because people think that this is not my responsibility. This is not my responsibility. Although everybody has responsibility. So first of all, you have to convince all the stakeholders that, well, this is also one of the responsibility that you have to share. That exactly we are doing that. And once that will be successful, then things will move forward. And I'm hopeful that within 2, 3 years, it will be more systematized and more regulated what it is as of now. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. Anuradha madam, would you like to add any points if you are here?
Uh, Dr. Ghosh has well said because change in the mental behavior of the people, that is a big challenge. I agree totally into it that until and unless all the stakeholders are involved in this value chain, they contribute to their responsibility, things are not going to change. Although a few PROs, I am again mentioning the Karusambhav is doing wonderful job in creating there is no third name that I am getting it. So there are very few PROs who are really working hard into creating awareness. But with again focus on the mental behavior change of the individual, it may be by motivating because in a country like India, the consumer wants a remuneration value. That's it. So that is why most of the e-waste gets leaked into the informal sector. And one thing more through this platform, Pranshuji, I would like to highlight that in the guidelines, in fact, CPCP has mentioned that producers may ensure collection by involving various agencies and including informal sector. And I would like to seek other people's view also regarding this. We are throughout the discussion we are talking that, and we all know in fact that informal sector is still playing a big role in collection as well as recycling. So I recall 10 years back also Ashish ji was there, Rachna ma'am was there. I had attended a roundtable international workshop there. And there at 10 years back also we discussed this point, and I will raise that point again also, that why don't we make informal sector a formal part of the system? We are always behind, even we are seeking entity directions, action on scrap dealers. We we can make them, we can issue even strict notice. Okay, moving part ahead, we can close their unit. But they are not collecting only e-waste, they are collecting other waste also. That is not justified. So why don't we, through their, like their Department of Labor is also there, and it is the responsibility of them to also ensure skill development and formalization of this informal sector. So that has been ignored a lot, and that requires a focus. That needs to be implemented because we can't do away with the informal sector. So it is not the way that we just close down their facilities, that just we come with strict rod on them. So this is not going to be the solution of the problem. We will have to engage them by formalizing them. That's
Yeah.
very important.
So, Anuradha madam and Dr. Ghosh, I would seriously request you to do one thing. Once their new rules are out, the draft version, please give your comments. And I hear this all the time, with the state pollution control boards, that, in most cases they do not give the comments when the draft version of the rule is out. So please
We
bring up your
always
points.
send, we always send.
Yeah. So because it is, at the end of the day, it enforcement, getting things well governed, taking away the greenwashing, taking away fake things is really in your hands. And if your views are not incorporated about whether it is collection systems, whether it is producer's responsibility, whether it is information-based channels, then things are never going to work. I mean, we may have another set of rules and then another set of rules, which which will tell us we have done, let's say, 4 lakh tons of recycling, but in reality probably the figure would be very different. So Rachna, over to you if you wish to add anything.
One of the things I just wanted to reflect quickly, I think on the informal sector, since 2 weeks back, I actually heard the ministry and CPCB in this workshop, which was organized by an industry body. Yeah, I think the systematic change that we are discussing right now and what the notion with what the rules are being designed, I think that's quite different, even though informal sector was clearly mentioned that no, they have to be integrated, it's going to be part of the system. But the other point which that just came conflicting was that we are actually not including PROs because they work with aggregators. They actually work with the informal sector, which is very difficult to trace. So we would not like to talk anything about collection, but let's just talk about a system where recycling would function, at least on the website, on the portal, or no, it'll work as a system. But then there will be a failure if you actually don't have the informal sector set up or a body there. So I think that's a big question mark of how they wish to integrate if it's not going to be aligned to a system. So I really appreciate this point that Dr. Radha, you just mentioned, that if a comment could go from the SPCBs and how do you actually talk about formalization, that's very important. But we have tried and struggled quite a lot, I think, on defining even the sector, and it's not going to be easy at least. So I think there needs to be some kind of a change, or at least a process of registering or yeah, including them somewhere in the system. That was a question that we had. The other thing I just wanted to reflect was the cost of awareness. And I think this, at least even in the plastic waste, and if the new e-waste regulations are kind of being adapted to be similar to the plastic waste rules, I think this is somewhere where the hidden costs also lie. Like, how do you actually engage with the citizens, the social kind of sector that I think Thomas, you clearly mentioned, plays a role, the society plays a role, but the costs that are being put on awareness to reach out, to engage with the citizens is actually so limited. And even from the government side, say this huge 5-year role program, like 5 years program, which along with a lot of states, 20, 25 states, that Ministry of IT was trying to do, what is the rollout? Is the government itself kind of accepting the tools which the other ministry was trying to work? Because I'm sure with the circular economy action plan, many more ministries would design interventions, whether it's dry waste, whether it's plastics or e-waste. I think, but where is a common point? And I think the space that Ashish was also reflecting. So these are things which are, of course, for the government to think about innovative ways of engaging and at least using the existing tools and measures that they have within to reach out to different sets of stakeholders that we actually talk about. Because yeah, I think it's such a diverse economy, and reaching out to everyone in a common language is also not going to be easy. So of course, there needs to be different ways of approaching the citizens, and creating this, at least a definition of EPR has to be gone out to the general public so that they actually could understand it much more, and create infrastructure where you can set up a collection measure, even if the rules don't talk about collection, or there are no targets on collection anymore. You would have targets around recycling, which makes the entire question of auditing and monitoring enforcement much more, I think, challenging for the government to take it up. So yeah, some of that reflections.
Thank you, Rachna. So just two more points, and we are almost at the closure of the dialogue. So can we really succeed without this investment in the infrastructure? And when I use the term infrastructure, I'm essentially talking collection systems. So how do we ensure? Yeah, how do we ensure that this really happens? And can a recycler with a focus on technological development, ensuring that he's successfully able to recycle? How does recycler create collection systems which are pan-India, which reach out to rural? I mean, India is just so large, and dispersion of products is all across. So how do we manage this? So let's just take a view from Ashish, Thomas, anyone else who wants to pitch in, and this will be the last question. So Ashish, Thomas.
No, I think it's imaginable. Whether it's doable or not is a different thing. You can imagine sort of large agglomerations of recyclers doing all kinds of, or extended arms of producers doing all kinds of collection infrastructure. You can imagine, you can wish it. Whether it's going to happen or not is a different thing altogether, right? So it requires different capacities, it requires different ways of working, it requires very many different models. And I think this is a tacit acknowledgement that a bulk of this work would actually continue to happen in the informal sector. So a parallel can be found in the automotive industry, right? So when you actually started looking at the supply chain of the automotive industry, a bulk of the dirtiest procedures were actually farmed out and were happening in small and medium enterprises until the kind of government cracked on them, right? So all the electroplating of these car parts was actually happening in the informal sector. And then, of course, there was a safe space within the sort of manufacturing facility, or this environmentally compliant manufacturing facility, which would get all the dirty material from different places, right? I think we're going in that direction. Part of it is that we're going in that direction. And I don't think you need government necessarily to help you in the formalization of the informal sector. A large part of value chains have been pulled up, standards have been pulled up through voluntary action as well. I think it's about sort of who makes that investment. And it can't be individual companies making investments for informal sector upgradation. It has to be a group of people. It could be through a PRO. Most likely, the most sensible way would be to go via a PRO. But of course, there are other ways of kind of imagining it again. So I think, and that can be done without government mandate or government pushing. Because if you really want to comply with standards in your entire value chain, otherwise you won't be able to meet those standards in the value chain. So I think I think we're going back in this discussion that, of course, if you actually have this two-actor model, you're presuming that somebody is going to bridge the two actors. It's most likely going to be the informal sector. It's going to be more and more the informal sector. You can of course, if brands are really pushed and they can come together, you can actually have a dialogue. Then they might be able to willing to make investments in upgrading that through a collective that is essentially back to a PRO. So that's the the iterative process through which you can actually have this dialogue, but you have to have this dialogue.
Sure. Thank you, Ashish. Thomas, last point from you before we call it off.
Well, you saved one of the hardest one to the last. I think I have very little to add to what Ashish just said. The only thing would maybe be that there are areas where we have an informal sector working, which are high priority to kind of stop. It's not to the same extent when it comes to collection, but when it comes to what you do with the collected material, there are areas where we shouldn't have an informal sector. We should try to kind of phase it out as rapidly as we can. Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas, for that note. And with that, I would, with deep gratitude, like to thank all of you. Ashish, great to have you here. You know, look forward to collaborating on this. As we roll it out, as we find solutions to this. Uh, Anuradha ji, you have been a constant support, a great I would say beacon in the state of Jammu to drive this through your enforcement activities. In one way or the other, it has led to change, and I believe please pass your viewpoints very strongly once this draft comes out or any draft comes out, because otherwise these points are not considered. Rachna, thank you for being a partner in this whole series. Dr. Ghosh, thank you so much for giving us the keynote and the fact that you are continuously trying to improve the situation in Bihar. We would really look to collaborate with you under this umbrella. Thomas, as usual, you have been a light to me, and thank you for sharing some of the wisest things here. We will come back to you, many times during these series of webinars, because there will be viewpoints that will need a global viewpoint. So thank you, and thank you, Shri Priya, for moderating. With that, I'd like to say thank you to all the audience. Thank you for putting in interesting questions. Last but not least, this is a series, so we will have the next webinar in a month's time. We look forward to your participation. Spread the word. We will, by the end of this webinar series, come out with a whole booklet of what are the different views, perspectives on EPR, and how do we ensure that it really leads to a circular economy at a country scale. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.